Hello, and welcome to Conflict Management in the Classroom, some strategies to help resolve interpersonal conflicts in a class. This is BTC Bite Size Series 2, Episode 3. So, what are we going to look at today? The steps we will cover. So this is basically all done in the order that conflicts arise and how you might handle it. So first things first is awareness of the dynamics in the classroom space. Next, we'll look at how to approach a conflict. We'll look at investigating the situation. We'll look at deciding on a method to tackle the issue, listening and understanding, agreeing the way forward, being consistent and following up, and then preventing repeat issues in the future. So let's look at awareness of the dynamics in the classroom space. So this is a key part. As teachers, obviously, we are always monitoring what's happening in the classroom. Yeah, and obviously we like to think we know our learners, we know our students, we like to think that they know that we care about them and their progress and all that kind of stuff. So obviously there are things that you need to ask yourself if you feel there's any kind of change in the dynamic in the classroom. So the first is, has a learner's attitude or attendance changed recently? Is someone who is usually talkative now quiet? It can actually be vice versa actually as well. How do learners react when paired with another? There might be a conflict there. How engaged are the other members of the group when one of the cohort is speaking? And do they openly challenge you or make negative comments about the task/direction of the class? So all of these are really kind of important to think about, and I'm sure most of you do this anyway during a classroom. And obviously in a lot of cases, there are times when literally just a simple question at the end of a class, just ask someone back, I haven't seen you around lately, is everything okay? You've been quiet recently, are you okay? What's going on? It's simple. Honestly, asking a simple question might be able to solve the issue immediately. However, sometimes it might not. So if it doesn't, we'll talk about approaching the conflict. So this is the kind of the key steps to approaching a conflict. The first thing is it is incredibly important that, as always, you are calm and rational. You are mindful of the situation. So if you're personally involved, you might need to ask an impartial person to handle it for you. So another teacher, obviously one of the admin team, something like that. Obviously, if that's that serious, then there are bigger issues, and that will be need to discuss further. But in terms of like a smaller conflict, obviously, just be open about it. Never get drawn into an argument, because this is where things go from being kind of rational to emotional, and it's very critical to remain calm during this. So yeah, don't get drawn into an argument. It will just get worse. Fire creates more fire. So also do not hope the situation goes away. So don't ignore it. And this also doesn't allow you to resolve the conflict, and it can create festering feelings within the group or with the student, because they've seen you're just being passive, basically. So the main thing is don't be passive and don't be aggressive. So in order to kind of solve this, you'll need to be assertive. And a lot of people, I think, usually misconstrue assertiveness with aggressiveness, right? You're kind of like, no, I want it this way. Yeah, that's not assertive. That's being aggressive. Assertive is being clear. It's being, this is how we're going to do things. It's about body language. Yeah, so a lot about like physical use of your body, how you stand, how you talk, the language that you use. Being mindful of what you're going to say, use facts, and also active listening. So listen carefully to those who are involved. It's very critical. Listening is a very underrated skill. It's important to be a good listener. So once we've approached a conflict, we need to investigate it. So take your time to find out what the issue is. It's important to, if it's a really big issue, it's important to get to the bottom of it. Is it a problem with the book? Is it a problem with how you're running the lessons? Is it a problem that they feel that you're nominating someone more often than you're nominating them? Are you criticizing them subconsciously? You might be doing it without realizing it. Listen actively to those involved and to make sure that you understand their point of view. So active listening is where you can summarize what they're saying and reflect it back on them. And it shows that you care, you've taken in the information, you've been able to process that information, and you're giving it back to them and getting a response. Be aware of the underlying cause might not be clear to begin with. I'll give you an example. I had a student who was very often late to a class, was quite negative, didn't want to do any kind of projects. We were working on a presentation project. Really didn't want to do it. Just wouldn't tell me why. Was just kind of being quite like, no, I'm not going to do it. I don't have time. I'm sorry, I'm busy. It turns out he had a newborn baby. It would have been very easy. The kind of the conflict that popped up, even though it was a very brief one, would have been immediately dealt with if I'd known that. But he never mentioned it, so I didn't know. So I kept pushing, and it was an issue because it created some friction. Because I was like, but why can't you do it? He had a less than 1 month old baby. Of course he didn't have time to do it. And then the main things: avoid being pulled into the middle and don't take sides. Never take sides. If there's a conflict between two students, never ever take sides. Always remain impartial. Always remain in the middle. If there is a bigger issue at hand, like I said before, talk to someone up the food chain. And once that gets escalated, then it will be dealt with properly. But yeah, so these are the things you need to be aware of when investigating. So let's talk on deciding how to tackle the conflict. So you need to ask yourself the following questions, and this is really critical. So first is this serious or trivial? If it's trivial, could it escalate? Yeah, sometimes if it's a trivial thing, it can be, no, it won't escalate. It will be done. They're in a bad mood, blah, 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 whatever. They'll be fine tomorrow or the next lesson. It could, it's a matter of if it's a persistent problem that someone has and it's not dealt with, it could escalate to become a serious problem where they might mention to, let's say, the admin team that, oh, the teacher has been ignoring me for the last 1 month, 2 months, something like that. Is the matter within your purview? By that, I mean, is it something that you're able to handle? Yeah, so as I said before, does it need to be highlighted to someone else? Does it need to be escalated? Does someone else need to be brought in? There are situations that sometimes pop up that are something you can't deal with. This is fine. Sometimes it's not about the lesson, right? In fact, most often it's not about the lesson. It's about something else that's going on in their life. So in this case, you'll need to be aware of this, and you'll need to know who to contact in that. If that's the case, that would be either the director of studies or the HR manager. But in this case, it's something you need to be aware of. So another question is, would it be best to come up with a solution yourself, or would it be more effective to decide as a group? And we'll talk about that a little bit in a minute. And the last one is, do you need time to let emotions settle before moving ahead? So obviously, if something kicks off and people get into a really heated debate about something and that conflict has flared up, dealing with it right in that moment might be a really bad idea. It might be more destructive than it would be productive. In those cases, you usually let people calm down, let them become rational again, because remember, once you become emotional, you slowly become more and more irrational. So let them become rational again, and then from there, then kind of like build from that. So listening and understanding. If there is a conflict happening, it is incredibly important that you allow everyone involved with that conflict to have their say. If you listen to one side and then act on it, that other person, the other party or people will be put off by that. Yeah, you've wronged them because you've never listened to them. It's critical that you listen to everyone. If you get everyone together, so maybe there's a conflict in the class, maybe you need to say, okay, guys, do you mind staying behind for a few minutes? Just we need to talk about what happened today, blah, blah, blah. It might just be 2 students, it might be 3 students or whatever. And say, right, do you mind staying behind? We need to talk about this. They say, okay. And, perhaps talking about stuff, you might be able to reach a solution to it. So just by chatting, just by having a quick meeting. You can also encourage those involved to be honest and give them the chance to explain their point of view and concerns. And this is also critical why I've always been pushing for us to get feedback from students towards the end of classes, maybe not every class, but every other class, or maybe like once every 2 weeks, something like that. How's it going? Do you feel everything's okay? Because it encourages them to be honest. Yeah. So they feel like they can talk to you and be honest about something. If they're not enjoying something in the classroom, they can tell you rather than letting it fester, let it escalate, and then you find out from the director of studies or from someone up higher up this food chain. Also, people are more willing to compromise if they feel they've been listened to and understood, and that's really critical. So as always, listening and understanding is very important. So you've done your listening and understanding, you've investigated it, you've asked some questions. You need to agree the way forward. So first of all, always acknowledge the emotional issues. These will need to be resolved, but it's normally not an emotional issue that is the conflict. It's normally a underlying problem. So don't let the emotional issues take over. That's very important. Explore any reason for disagreement. So why does someone disagree? Maybe they want to change the way that the class is taught and someone disagrees with them. Why do you disagree? Why don't you want to try something new? Maybe it will work for them as well. It's that kind of encouragement. Dig a little bit. Identify and address any misunderstandings which are blocking agreements. That's really helpful. Again, it's kind of similar to any reasons for disagreements. Ask those involved to offer preferred solutions to the issue. So maybe something's not working for someone. Maybe they have a solution that you could try for a few lessons, something like that. That might appease people. That might give them an option to kind of go, oh, okay, I've been listened to. And then help everyone agree on what represents the best way forward. So again, it's that whole kind of like collaborative, cooperative working together to solve the issue. So nearly done. Next stage is being consistent and following up. So the decision's been made and it's been agreed to. The key is now to stick with it. So this is being consistent. You have to be consistent with this. If an issue happens again in the future, you have to handle it with the same care and the same attention as you have the previous one, the previous ones, all of that kind of stuff. If you don't handle things consistently, you will be seen to have favoritism. You will be seen to be unfairly treating other members of the group. So it's critical that you treat everyone equally and you handle everything in the same way. Following up is just as important as being consistent because it shows that you remember and you care and you want to make sure that everything's fine. And in this case, so you can just check in and say, hey, is this working for you? Blah, blah, blah. Again, this is the feedback thing that I keep talking about. As long as you keep getting feedback, it's a good time to ask these questions. It's not a weird artificial, can I pull you aside and talk to you? It might make them feel uncomfortable. It's a time when they feel open to express themselves, their opinions on the matter. Okay. So the last thing is preventing recurring issues. When it comes to dealing with conflict, prevention is 99% of it. If you can prevent creating an environment where conflicts arise, then you will have a much nicer time. You can't always stop every conflict from happening. It's just human nature to be in conflict with one another. But especially when you're teaching adult professionals, because of course they are under a lot of stress a lot of the time, especially when you're teaching in their place of work, that stress does not go away. So you need to ask yourself more questions. You need to reflect on the steps you took, and you need to ask yourself, what was it successful? What have you learned from it? And what might you do differently next time? The other thing, again, it feeds into the feedback thing. You can create a group identity in the classroom, and by creating that kind of that group, that feeling of like, this is the group, we're a group together, we're in this together, we're in this. And when I talk about, creating learning experiences, when I'm talking about doing the inductive learning, all of these kind of things, It's critical, really, really critical, that all the things that we do are there to make them feel like this is a space where it's an environment where they can learn, and it's a productive environment. And by creating that identity within the group with good rapport, with practical applications of the language, all of that kind of stuff, that will create a place where they will have less likely kind of like instances where they will have conflicts. Yeah, and then obviously the feedback and reflection on content. This will kind of just keep encouraging that open and honest communication between you and your learners. So again, thanks very much for watching. I hope it was helpful. Obviously, if you have any views or anything, you can always let me know. Next week's video is on punctuation. It will be the first, I have a feeling, of a few on that topic, but they will be spread out, so it won't be one punctuation video after another. But yeah, so thank you very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. Goodbye.